Favor say aye.
Aye.
Got it. Passes unanimously. Minutes, the March 12th minutes have been provided. Are there any additions or corrections? Two agendas.
Move the minutes as submitted.
Okay, moved by Burks. Is there a second? Josh, I'm letting you have this one.
Sounds great.
Second by Chapman. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Public comment. This is a time for members of the public to address the committee on matters which are not listed on this agenda. Are there any? See no one rushing the microphone. We will then, were there any written public comments? Okay. Discussion items, item 6. Pacifico, I've changed the name of it, because the people didn't get the note on that. I'm now calling it Drew Circle Apartments. That's the street that it's on. So Pacifico rehab update. I guess we're going to have Brian Piscini, Director of General Services for Yolo County. How is that going?
Good afternoon, Brian Piscini, Director of General Services, responsible for the capital projects aspect of the county's activities, including the rehabilitation of Pacifico Building A and B. Last time when I spoke at this group, a couple months ago, we had talked about, we were at the 30% mark. We were looking at finalizing a few things, and then we'd come back to this body with an updated schedule. So where we are today is based on the actions of the City Council back in March, I believe it was, and our internal discussions, we have moved forward with the remaining design of 100% for the project. What that means is when you go from 30% design to 100% design, 30% you've got all your walls finalized. Getting to 100% is working on all the internal guts of a building, the electrical, the plumbing, the fire life systems, the fixtures of the door handles to locking mechanisms to furniture. All that gets developed in this next 70% design. We have a good relationship with the city's building department. As a reminder, the city's building department has jurisdiction over the project for plan check. And as we go through design, what will happen next is we continue to work with the city collaboratively on what our design intents are for the building. And they have participated in our meetings. We will go back to the building department, the city's building department, for plan check and approved plans in September, and we plan to go out to bid in November, early November. So we have this under contract by end of December, and thus secure or encumber the county share of funds for the project. The required actions upcoming from the bodies, specifically the county, is in that late September, October phase, we will approach the county to approve plans and specs. That's a process in the public contract code. So we'll ask them to approve plans and specs. And once they approve that, we can go out to bid. And then we'll return to the county for approval of the construction contract. At some point in that process, we'll also need approval from the city to formalize their commitment and to contribute to that construction contract, which we'll know in that December timeframe what that dollar value is. Of course, we'll check in with you on what our 100% cost estimate is, so you have a rough estimate of where material costs may have increased from the last time we talked, and that will happen as well. The scope of the project has changed a smidgen from when I last talked. Previously, you may have heard the program requirements were to keep a dormitory setting for some of the buildings. In April, our client, Health and Human Services, did request to explore more 1 and 2 bedroom arrangements. So the scope has changed to remove the dormitory component and add in more 1 and 2 bedrooms. So each building would have 6 one-bedroom rooms and 4 two-bedroom rooms. This is far more family-friendly, having the multi-bedrooms. we hope it will bring much success to the project. Are there questions?
Questions?
I'm sorry, Rank, can you chat a little bit more about, you said it's going from, so basically it's going down to 20 units total?
Correct.
Within the two buildings, and that's from what number? Remind me again, how many
so-
units are there right now?
Yes, so the old style, building B particularly had 20 dormitory style bedrooms. So it's more communal living, and so that is going down to 10 units, the 6 1-bedroom and the 4 2-bedrooms. Building A had more of a mix, 2 dormitory style rooms, 7 1-bedroom units, 1 studio apartment, and then 2 2-bedroom units. And that will also be mirrored to 6 1-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units.
I think what may, just to jump in real quick, what may be helpful is, I think the project in the past has often been referred to in a number of beds, as a number of people accommodated or beds. And so to the extent we can provide sort of a compare and contrast between prior bed count and new bed count, that may actually be fairly instrumental, I think, I suspect, to the city.
Well, I'll work with the Health and Human Services Department to finalize that and get that to this body after this meeting.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what other things can be done while we're waiting for this? And I guess that's on the city side, because I know that we had some funds that we were going to put into Pacifico for some rehabilitation and just things that needed to happen. And are we ready to go on those items?
So we have a couple of different funding sources. So our social services folks, and Dana is here, can speak more to it. I think she's been in conversation with Ryan to see if there are some things we can get started on. In particular, there was the parking lot and the trash enclosure that both need to be dealt with. It could be done separate from the rest of the project. So those may be on a slightly different timeline than the rest, as I understand it, or could be. The other thing that I just want to note is that when we last met, we did not have the final written notification back from HUD regarding the what are called the home ARP funds, which is the $1.37 million that the city was contributing. We had received a verbal approval. We hadn't received anything beyond that. We just got that. So yay! Now we have that. We're just finalizing the signatures and such. And so once everything is finished, we'll be able to really have those dollars. So that's good news.
And if I could add, I know the discussion around if can we move the parking lot improvement, the trash enclosure ahead of schedule. It doesn't sound like the most appealing thing. But I want to emphasize that the trash enclosure as it is today would not pass any ADA code today. It is, at a personal level and at a professional level, pretty disconcerting at what the expectation is for any person in that facility to go down a steep slope around the corner and then throw their waste away. So this proposed relocation of the trash enclosure would spin it around from facing away from Pacifico to the buildings, raise the elevation so it's more level with the parking lot, and really make it a much safer and shorter path of access for anyone who has mobility issues. It's really a momentous thing in itself. I recognize, though, it's kind of hard to say, hey, we're going to move the trash enclosure. It's actually a big deal.
Lucas?
I'm good right now.
Okay, I have a couple questions/comments. Back to the city. So you have written, which is very exciting. I was at HUD last week before, and I was like, by the way, I didn't mention any names, but I'm just hoping that the karma of like, come on, that then maybe that helps. So that's great. Did they happen to mention in their writing when the money would arrive?
So the way that HUD's dollars, or the home dollars, and our CDBG dollars as well work is that it's reimbursement basis. So we spend the funds, then we provide the background information that shows that it's out of our bank account, and then we request a draw from HUD. So this should be what we need in order to then proceed with things that will allow for us to make draws.
Okay, great. So maybe in the order of operations and when we're spending money, let's see if we can spend their money first. I know that it
Yes,
can't be
that's
spent
fine.
today, we have, but,
Dana and I have had some conversations on strategizing around that, and to make sure we maximize success.
okay, that's great. I have a question about the supportive housing part of it, so now I'm looking to the county people about that, because knowing that, and actually I didn't watch the governor's thing, so I'm always assuming bad news these days. But are we, because this model is based on a supportive housing model, so I want to make, yeah, come on up, Tico, you're the responsible person now. Thank you for being here. I just want to make sure that the funding source for that from CalWorks is still in place as of this moment. I know you can't see the future.
Yes, good afternoon officially, right? So yes, the funding is in place for HSP dollars. We did get confirmation that it was extended through December 31st, so funds have to be expended by December 31st, but yes, they are still in place.
Right, that's for the building. My question was about once we build it, the model of this housing project is that it's supported CalWorks program.
Gotcha.
So the supportive part of it, once the people are in the building,
Yes,
is
we
that
get
still
an-
there?
it is. We get an annual allocation, and it's remained pretty flat over the last few years. So we haven't yet received what our allocation will be for 25-26. We're anxiously awaiting, but yes, we do get an annual allocation for ongoing programs.
Great, thank you. And then just thanks to Ryan, I mean, I'll come back up again, but no, thank you for the timeline, and I'm assuming that you received it because that was a question that the city had about the timeline. Did you get that yet? Because I saw it. Did you receive the timeline?
That was my next question, was timelines.
Oh.
I haven't received anything.
We have a PDF. I will send it to the city for just, yeah, and then we'll get that to you right after this.
And that's for, how far out is that timeline? What is that?
So that goes all the way to when we anticipate to go out to bid in early November. So the construction piece, typically you get your timeline for design when you get to bidding and contract award. And once you get the schedule back from the bids, you have an understanding of what the construction timeline is. For a project like this, we internally think it'll be probably 9 months of tenant improvement work, actual work, maybe a year. So it kind of depends on how we get to that bidding phase and what we hear back from contractors. But
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I just want to make sure that we stay in front of, kind of, especially if it's, November, you're hitting the holiday season, and when, depending on when construction starts, that we stay in front of kind of community outreach and engagement before anything gets broken or, broken ground or things of that nature. So I just want to flag that as something I think we need to be aware of, especially if it's kind of bookend by holidays and things of that
I
nature.
think, to the city's credit, working with them on communication for the Walnut Park Library, I think has been a very good model for the county to learn from and to work with. I would be open to collaborating with them again, and I think as a city resident, I've seen that communication out from the city. It's been very helpful.
Thank you.
So that, the community outreach is not currently on the timeline because it was all construction focused at E, but it might be nice to get the programmatic part of it together and when the community outreach would be, just so we're all on the same page about when that's gonna happen.
If I may, one of the areas I see that's important for community outreach is when we're at the point to either approve the plans and specs, so people know that's happening. That's a very big milestone in the construction world. And when the contract's coming back for approval, when you actually have a contract for approval. And then again, when you have your mobilization date, when all the construction trucks will show up. And those are some real key points we've seen from other projects that the community, should they be engaged, are points where they are engaged.
Yes, thank you. I think we can assume that the community will be engaged.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything from the staff table? You're just busy over there reminiscing? No, go ahead. Okay, next item then is item B, F Street encampment cleanup follow-up. Here comes the team. That was
Good afternoon. My name is Marissa Green, and I am the Interim Director of Social Services for the county, and I'm happy to be here. I'm going to pass this to Dana if you want to go first, or do you want me to just do it?
She has PowerPoint. Maybe it's a joint PowerPoint.
Yeah, what I'll do is, I'll talk a little, can you hear me okay? I'll talk a little bit about how this all kind of came together, show you what we were working with, and then I'll let Marissa and the county team talk about how we collaborate on the cleanup. So. Okay.
Switch input to.
So on March 4th, in response to a number of community concerns and information that our homeless outreach team was receiving about the area, the city reached out to the county to see if there was a way that we could collaborate on cleaning up in that area. At that meeting, we had participants from our city homeless outreach team, from Davis Community Meals and Housing, which works in that area with a number of people that were living in that area. The city police department, code enforcement, and county public works, and county code enforcement as well. We did a quick drone oversight of the what the location looks like. And you can see here, this is the encampment that's in this area, and you can see the neighborhood here in Cobell. This is F. And just so you have an idea of what the encampment looked like before. We saw there are a number of people that would essentially cross the tracks and were camping down in this area. They were camping here along the canal as well. Some people have been there for a number of years. Some people were new to the area, but we were seeing that the encampment was continuing to grow. And they were bringing a lot of different things with them. So we did some work. Here's another location that was a little further down. We did a lot of work so we had an understanding of who was there, what the conditions were. And at that meeting, we worked together to try to determine what the response would be. And we were all in agreement that working together, the first response would be engagement. And that's why we worked really hard with Davis Community Meals and Housing and our outreach team and the county's outreach team to go and understand who was in the area and to let them know that we were planning a cleanup for that area. Some were reluctant because they thought that, we'll wait and see if this is going to happen. But through our outreach and through talking with people, we were really able to convey that, no, at this point, this is an area that is going to see in cleanup. We worked with our code enforcement department and with the county's code to notice the area so people were aware that you have a certain period of time to clear the area. And we'd like you to work with Davis Community Meals and Housing with outreach to see if we can offer you services or find another place that would be a better location for you. So after we developed the strategy of outreach and then our noticing and then actually going out to do enforcement, the teams came together to talk about who would be able to do what. And so I will go back to, those are all the slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dana. Let's see. So I just want to give credit to a lot of folks who really helped on this. It's not just a one-person job. This is the second time we've done this cleanup with Dana. It's a very prime real estate for folks that are living unhoused because it has a shady area just past the tracks, the terrain drops. People are able to make some kind of enclosures for themselves. There's a tunnel down there, it has access to water, access to the train tracks. It's just a prime real estate for those living unhoused. So this happens probably once a year, and I would expect that it will happen again next year when it starts to get warmer in the warmer months. So I just want to give credit to these folks. Carrie got a call from Dana. They work very collaboratively together in the homeless space. But really, this is a job that the community services department did. They have so many folks in that team that went out to support this project. So as Dana said, this is a prime place where we have been out there several times because of the shade and the poor visibility from the road. Homeless folks really do collect there in numbers, and it becomes kind of a small community. So this part there, when we met, it was really kind of a concern about fires. So much debris had started to gather there, and it was so dry with all of the private owners' kind of weeds and whatnot that's growing there. It really started to be a safety hazard for fire season. Additionally, there was a lot of debris that was related to drug use and also some lighters and flammable liquids, which I will show you in the next slide, that really were a concern that it could just kind of ignite, especially with the railroad tracks being there, sparks fly, things of that nature, very scary. So here's some of the things that they found, and they found a lot of these items. This is just a snapshot of some of the items they found. And so you can see those are what looks to be drugs, right, and some trash that's all around. And I'll go to the next one. There's also some flammable propane tanks there. I'm not even really sure what I'm looking at on the other one, but just to tell you, the last time I went out there and walked the space last year, it's incredible how much debris it collects. It's just incredible. So this is the cleanup crew. Once the homeless encampment crew went out and kind of surveilled the area, we really realized that we needed like a hazmat kind of cleanup for some of this needle and other items. And so Marissa Jeweler, who works for Community Services and oversees the landfill, had just had a couple of folks who were trained to do this. And so this is them giving a thumbs up in their job that day, working really hard to clean up all that hazmat material. So when folks went out to do the rest of the cleaning, they weren't in danger for having a safety issue. And so I just want to give a few shout outs to some folks who really connected. There was a huge email that came out with City of Davis and the county. Stephanie Comer, Chris Rice, Marissa Jeweler, Scott Doolittle, Todd Ridio, Ed Medina, and Jeremy Humbre. He's a sergeant with the Sheriff's Office. And Carrie just really kind of, rallying around these folks to get this happening because it was a huge undertaking. And so a lot of credit doesn't even go to the folks that are standing here, but the folks that are probably doing more work like that today. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Marissa. Really appreciate the overview. I just wanted to note that from CEO perspective, the collaboration here I think is very commendable. There's a lot of complexity to these, as you're hearing, especially with the hazardous materials element and pivoting on that to seek out resources that we had in a department that we probably never would have thought of utilizing before, but they stepped up, helped out, and I think with each, sadly, with each of these cleanup things that happen, especially in this location, we're learning more and more about how to collaborate, how to work together in better, more efficient ways. I think as Marissa stated, it's not a matter of if, but when things come back. And so, what's of interest on my mind is, how we can collaborate, work together at the staff level, to help do what we reasonably can to help prevent that from things getting so established in the first place. That takes persistence, it takes resources to do that. I recognize that, but I think both organizations are committed to doing that and seeing how we can continue to partner and build that partnership moving forward on these places of intersect between the jurisdictions. And there's also, in this case, the added extra complexity of having both city and county, but also railroad, which is its own entity, as we all know, and also private property owners. So no less than 4 different sort of jurisdictions, if you will, and ownership interests at play, which it makes it that much more complex. So just happy to answer questions, as Marissa noted, and thank you.
So just, thanks so much for that overview, appreciate it. I think, quick question as it relates to Union Pacific, we have had, mixed success with engaging with them on some of these issues. I think in this particular instance, folks are very aware of where the borders are and such and the boundaries, so they're kind of out of the UP right away and kind of on the private property side, which is in the county, but we have had a little success somewhat recently on like the former cable car wash site, and they finally UP provided, authority for the county and the city to sort of do enforcement as needed, at least in that site, and they said, I think in the letter, any other property essentially in and around the city and the county. So was that at all needed for purposes of the F Street site, and or what, how are we doing it as it relates to the Union Pacific situation? Just
So
curious.
early in the process, we talked about whether or not we needed to involve the railroad. At that time, the sheriff didn't believe that we needed to. He thought that where the encampment was, there wasn't much that we would need to involve them with, but we didn't notify them.
Okay.
So we're notifying UP whenever we do any kind of action, and we've had a lot of success in their willingness to work with us if we identify the site early.
And thank you, appreciate that. My understanding, at least in this latest iteration, especially on the F Street, the northern part of it, that they were actually, folks were kind of doing the digging underneath the,
But they had gone
into the
out and
embankments
taken
of
a
it,
look.
which is,
Yeah, they looked at the track in advance, and after they looked at it, they got in touch with our code enforcement and with the sheriff and said, it doesn't look like we have much involvement that we need at this point.
appreciate that. And then the other item is just really, especially related to the county staff, the whole team, sure, but I mean, especially those folks from the landfill who were doing the hazardous waste sort of work. I'm really grateful. That's not surprising to have Marissa sort of jump in and be of assistance there, but really, really grateful for that, because we don't want any of our employees of any of our agencies or any members of the public obviously harmed by sort of the conditions that are out there. And I know that's a huge issue at any time there is this sort of work is undertaken. So just really, really a huge amount of thanks to the folks, especially from sort of the landfill specifically, but the health and HHW kind of folks over there. Really, really great. Appreciate all that energy and work. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Partita?
So I'm wondering about the vegetation in that area, and if there's anything that we can do to make that area less desirable and less sheltered. I don't know, it sounds like that might be Union Pacific's.
So they have a
Area.
certain, they actually measure from the railroad tracks a certain amount. You remember exactly what the inches or the feet, so they know what is their property and what's not their property. And like Michael said, it's private property, then county property lines, and then city property lines. So we have to work together. But to me, the reason it's so sought after is because it has that huge drop and it's so shady. I mean, I went out there last year in 100-degree weather and then went down there and I went, wow, you can feel kind of breeze coming from the creek or the spillway. And I think that you'd have to put giant boulders. And I've seen Portland do things like that. I've seen Austin do things like that, who had a really big homeless, encampment problem. But it would take something that would really deter them from even being able to access that area.
And we've been talking with the private property owner as well, because a lot of the drainage ditch is a lot of, it's private. So the sheriff and our police department walked that ditch with the private property owner. They're gonna take some steps too, to see what they can do to kind of trim down a lot of the vegetation for one, so it's not quite as shady. And then other things that they can do on that property to make it less attractive. So those talks are happening now.
Okay. And then the second question I had is, I know we did this a year ago. Are these the same folks that were out there last year? And is there any way that we can
So we
keep
talked,
tabs and?
and a lot of the reason that the folks that are there are because it's for different jurisdictions, and they essentially know every year, this is how much time I have when I hop from one location to the next. So that's why we've been working together to see what we can do about folks that are there. I know that Davis Community Meals and Housing have been talking with one couple in particular that have been there for over 6 years. And they're very reluctant to leave, even though they have medical issues, they're seniors. They've attempted to bring them in for housing. They've become accustomed to being outdoors. So what we've been telling the folks in that area is now that we've got it cleared, we're expecting that folks will be staying away because we're going to continue to work together and they're going to continue to see us. So we prefer that either they come into town so we can try to connect them with some kind of service. But again, we're looking at people with very a long-term kind of being accustomed out there, and it's just harder to get them to move. But that's why we're partnering with Davis Community Meals, who have a very good relationship with all of them.
To your question though about tracking them, I think that we spoke about this at the Executive Commission to address homelessness. We do use a management system, the Homeless Management Information System, and I know Dana's team does enter those folks in there, and so that we can have those conversations and allows us to mutually exchange information on those folks. But yes, many are the same.
Just a couple things, most of them have been answered, thank you. Is the sheriff, I had heard that the sheriff or Davis PD or somebody was gonna start going by there to make sure that they didn't just reestablish. Has that happened, and which jurisdiction is doing it?
The sheriff's office, I think, is doing some patrol, some close patrol on our regular schedule. I can confirm with Sergeant Hembry to make sure what that schedule is and share it, but I don't know exactly what it is. But yes, he put it on his radar.
Okay, good. So if they're looking, if something starts to get
Yes.
established, rather than getting, it's my understanding that this year was even bigger than last year, is that correct?
I didn't walk it this year, but I saw the photos because she really surveilled the area so we could figure out where we had to, all go and send our folks. But I don't know, was it bigger, Dana?
I don't think it was much. I think it's about the same.
Yes.
And we do have our homeless outreach team goes there on a regular basis just to stop by and see what's going on. And Davis Community Meals and Housing, they know the folks that are there. They've been doing a really good job of using peers to go out and counsel the folks out there too, and to talk to them about, you've got to keep. We're telling people that we're expecting that encampments are not going to grow if they get beyond a certain point. That's going to create more scrutiny. And so we start with our outreach team to kind of see what's going on over there. We send the peer support people down there to talk to people about coming into town for help. And then Davis Community Meals and Housing also does outreach. So we're trying to keep it keeping the number of people there at a very low level.
And
What's the number of people?
I don't know for this year. Last year it was about 15, 16, and we ended up housing those folks for a period of time. And I will say there were some successes that came out of that, where we were able to enroll some of those individuals into our Prop 47 Cohort 3 Connections to Care program, and some other folks who were able to connect back with family and get them where they needed to go. But even 1 or 2 or 3 out of 16 is a huge success. And if we keep doing this, we might actually resolve, minimize the problem maybe a little bit more.
Well, and I'll just add, I think the constant eyes and ears out there, of course, are the neighbors.
Yeah,
And
that's where I hear from.
we kind of hears from them, and know the city hears from them. And I think as long as we're communicating with one another, when we start to hear, chatter from the neighborhood about the things starting to establish, that'll be an important point of connection for us too, in terms of our jurisdictions. Make sure we're talking about that when those messages start to crop up. Sometimes they'll catch things, days or even weeks before we might otherwise. So, yeah.
That's exactly how Dana got the call.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great work on this, hopefully better, towards better, that's where we're heading. All right, next item is Crisis Now update. Joan Cornell, interim HSA director. Oh, Tony, who's coming? Come on down.
Good afternoon, I'm Joe Flanell.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Tony Kildare. I'm the interim behavioral health director to provide an update on Crisis Now. For those of you who are not aware, the Crisis Now model has these 3 primary components. It's a number to call, somewhere to respond, and a place to go. The county has the first two already in place. So the number of calls, our high-tech call center, we have a 24/7 mobile crisis response team that went into place on January 1 of 2024. So we have those parts in place, but we've been struggling with developing a behavioral health receiving center. So we've had Crisis Now, we had Crisis 2.0, it became Crisis eventually. Where we're at right now is, as we discussed at the board meeting, the board of supervisors meeting on April 29th, that our budget wasn't penciling out in terms of what we needed to do in order to establish a standalone behavioral health receiving center that was county operated through a vendor contractor. So we're pivoting to a different approach. We are exploring a couple of different options with existing providers who are already providing the same types of services or similar services. So we had two different facilities that we were looking at in Sacramento and one facility that we were looking at in Woodland. So we've received permission through our procurement department to move forward with developing a sole source contract with one of the providers in Sacramento. That's WellSpace. WellSpace provides a behavioral health receiving center that's site certified with Sacramento County, so it's kind of Sacramento County behavioral health program for all intents and purposes, but we've been in communication with Sacramento County. They're comfortable with allowing us to participate in that program in a limited role. Their biggest request of us was, hey, if you bring someone here, you have to take them back. You can't just bring people to Sacramento and leave them there. And that's not anything that we're planning to do. So we're working out the transportation pieces just to ensure that we can get people there and bring them back to Yolo County when they're done at the receiving center. The other facility that we're currently looking at is an existing facility that we have for behavioral health residential services, and that's with Yolo, by CCC, right, Safe Harbor. And what we've been talking to Safe Harbor about is whether or not they'd be willing to modify their existing program plan slightly just to allow for this. And they said that they don't think it's going to be problematic. So we're working on modifying the existing contract to hold some additional beds. So our current approach with Safe Harbor is that we have 5 beds that we're always holding, so we're going to hold 8 beds. So with both of these options, we believe that we can get everything in place by July 1st. That's our target date. We're trying to get the contract with WellSpace completed and complete the contract modification with Safe Harbor by that date. And the idea would be, as we're responding to individuals who are making a request for assistance through mobile crisis response, that if they need these types of services, that we would either transport them to Sacramento or to Safe Harbor. We're also going to be developing other pathways for people to access these services. So we're going to be doing some outreach with the local hospitals to make sure that they know how to route people to these services in a way. So at the board meeting on April 29th, we have discussed that we would be doing this as a one-year project. We have $1 million of these ARPA funds. We have some different funding, including funding that has come from Davis and the other cities, funding that's coming from the hospital, and funding that's coming as part of our Department of State hospitals plan, like the IST plan. And again, we believe that we'll have everything operational by July 1st. So I'll pause and allow you to ask any questions.
Questions? Go ahead.
So this seems like a dispersed model where we have been talking about a centralized model previously.
That's
for
correct.
the receiving.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like? What does it look like as far as the funding for a centralized versus a dispersed? Is it more expensive to do a dispersed versus if we had decided to centralize this?
I mean, I think that's a fair question, and I don't know if I can really answer that authoritatively, but I believe that a centralized model would likely be more expensive just because there's overhead costs and associated costs go along with it. We also have more control over the services in that regard, and we would have the ability to bill Medi-Cal for the services to offset some of the cost. But I don't know that we haven't done like a side-by-side comparison. And to be perfectly honest with you, we weren't looking at, what you're calling like a dispersed model prior to realizing that we just weren't going to be able to fund the standalone project, right? So I don't know, but I suspect that it would likely probably cost us more to do like our own project.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, I understand that we're saving on having to, get a space, refurbish a space, put all the stuff that's needed. Working with these places that are already, up and going is, we're saving money there, but what we're paying the providers or the contractors, I'm wondering about that piece. Is it more expensive to pay providers or not?
Yeah, again, I don't know that I could speak to that authoritatively, because the original plan for us was to develop a physical plant in Woodland and then to put it out to bid, right? And so we never did that part, right? So we never actually did put it out for a competitive bid and have never received any solicitation. So I wouldn't be able to tell you what the comparative cost would be versus what we're likely to be paying.
Sure. It makes more sense, right, to have a contractor, but it would be nice to know if in fact it does make more sense, right?
So, can we have is it okay to just,
Yeah.
we have a little bit of discussion about it? I mean, I appreciate your question. I might not have it on paper here, but we had estimates of what it was gonna cost to construct the facility. It was like, millions and millions of dollars. This is like doing the sort of potential chairs, certainly just like actual sort of contracted chairs in Sacramento and then we don't know yet exactly the safe harbor sort of might have to do some renovations there, but it's way less expensive. I think it's safe to say that.
Sure.
I know we don't have any sort of exact dollar amounts, but I'm seeing everybody's heads nodding, yes, it's way less expensive to do.
I'm definitely trying to be careful, right? I agree
Sure.
with Supervisor Frerichs, right? But at the same time, I cannot authoritatively speak to
Right,
that. There
right.
has not been a side-by-side comparison.
No, it intuitively seems like it would be a lot less money. And what I am wondering about also is it would be great if there was a space in Davis where people could be taken to as well, because right now, if we have someone in crisis in Davis, they're going to go to West Sacramento or they're going to go to Woodland. And if somebody in Winters is having a crisis, I don't know that Winters is big enough or has as many folks that would be needing that service. And honestly, I don't know if Winters is equidistant from Woodland and Davis. But what would really be great is if we also had a contractor in Davis.
So the concerns that
Especially if we're giving money for it.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And I think that the concerns that you're bringing up are the same concerns that other localities brought up. So for example, West Sacramento, when we were talking about having the standalone project, right, Crisis 2.0, right, West Sacramento was like, we don't know if we want to invest in transporting people all the way to Woodland, right? So yes, the ideal solution would be that each city had its own receiving center, right? But again, then the costs are to multiply, right? Because you have overhead and you have the cost of managing 3 different centers. You have staffing costs, right? And again, it's hard to forecast demand as well, right? So with this particular pilot project, we're hoping to gather some information around that and to get a better idea about what demand is. Are there certain cities where they're using it more frequently and so on and so forth, right? But to your point, yeah, it would definitely be more desirable if we could put one in each location and maybe one in a rural area. We could have 4 specific receiving centers, but the original plan was just to have one in Woodland, and it would be the same, kind of the same effect for Davis residents.
Right, so that's why I was asking about
Sure.
the analysis of the funds is because if we're saving, how much are we saving? Are we saving enough that we can do 3 locations? Right, so I understand the nature of it.
I would just say that if we can't do 1 location, we probably can't do 3.
Well, I think also I think this first year is really, I mean, as Tony said, I mean, it's, sorry to use the P word in the room, the pilot, so I know there's some sensitivity. But with respect to, just trying this out, we're all together going to be trying this out for the first time, and think also making sure that we're sort of doing some compare and contrast to what is the current condition, which is where folks are ending up in ERs. And that's really, and while there's one in Davis, that's really not the ideal solution, in place for someone to end up in the first place, period. So, even if with the location in Woodland being the closest option, most likely for Davis folks, they're still probably getting a lot more care and acute attention much faster than even if they went to the ER here in town. So a lot of it is just doing what are our metrics and what are our baselines, right? And also reporting back and having regular communication with all of the partners on Crisis Now to say, how is it going? And giving ourselves the ability to adjust moving forward to after, we get some data under our belt to see how it's going, how we might need to adjust in the future to best accommodate the needs.
And as far as data goes, I would think that we have some numbers about which jurisdictions or which cities, like the numbers in each of the cities of folks ending up in the ER or being transported to the ER. And I mean, we must have that.
I think that we would have to ask the hospitals for that data, right? Because we wouldn't necessarily have.
A little bit of a challenge with privacy issues, though, HIPAA requirements. I mean, it's not just it's possible, but it's...
We could ask for aggregated data, but the hospitals would be the ones who would be in possession of that data, because sometimes individuals end up in the ER sort of outside of our processes. So for example, if law enforcement's encountering someone and for some reason or another they didn't initiate our mobile crisis response and they take them directly to the hospital, or sometimes people just self-refer to the hospitals, right? So, to your point, that data likely exists, but we would need to work with the hospitals as a partner to obtain it.
At a minimum, we should have the co-responders that we're funding, we would have that data.
We do, and just to be, transparent about what's going on with our mobile crisis response, we also believe that there's unmet demand, right? So the implementation of the mobile crisis response model was particularly difficult for the agency, and we're working with a contracted partner that's doing part of the response, and then we have internal staff that are doing another component of the response. But we have not been fully activated after hours, right? So we have been working with local law enforcement about the best way to employ it. But the challenge is that law enforcement is saying, hey, don't bring us something if it's not actually going to work, right? So if we call and you guys don't come, we're never using you ever again, right? Which is problematic, right? Because we're trying to determine what the actual demand is. And we believe that there is much more demand that we're just not seeing, right? So we have our clinicians who are embedded with local law enforcement, and they're actually going out and they're making contact with lots of individuals out in the community, but they're on typically from around 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're noticing like a drop off in response, right?
People don't have problems then.
But it just makes no sense, right? It just makes absolutely no sense. We would anticipate that there's greater demand. So we believe that even to your point about what data we likely have, we believe that it's incomplete. It's an incomplete data set, and we're working on sorting all that stuff out currently.
Councilmember Chapman?
Sure, thank you. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Couple of questions. So where are the other jurisdictions in terms of, I know when we started this, Supervisor Ferris was a council member, not even the mayor yet, and now he's a supervisor. So, there were charts with different jurisdictions. So where are the other jurisdictions in terms of putting money into the pilot?
All the other jurisdictions have contributed except one, and that we'll just keep it. We're working on that. Right, so we had had a commitment from all of the jurisdictions, and we're working with one of the jurisdictions about something that's going on with it. But yes, in principle, all of the jurisdictions are signaling that they want to contribute.
And when you say all jurisdictions, you're referring to Davis, West Sacramento, Woodland?
That's correct.
Those three jurisdictions.
And the health.
And the two hospitals, yes.
Got it, okay. And then when do you see kind of the decision point or touch point for cities? I mean, speak, quite frankly, this is completely different than what I imagine other jurisdictions as well as Davis had agreed to, right, previously in what we were putting forward. So I looked at our city manager and kind of if this comes back to the Davis City Council and say, yes, we want to do a pilot program that's $310,000 for 1 year. Is that how we want to use those dollars? Is that something that we're still continuing to do? When do you need that information? Or I'll turn to Kelly, see if that's something that we're looking to do, or what our thoughts are on the allocation that was made 3 years ago.
So, yeah, several years ago, the city council set aside, at that time it was ARP dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars, in the amount of 1.17 million for the program, and then as we've talked about, it's morphed and evolved multiple different times, and the more recent number that we were holding aside was $930,000. So the 310 is just 1/3 of that number. It was our understanding that that would be, from the county, that would be what would be likely necessary to engage in the pilot for a year. With our city's budget situation, we will need to have a conversation with the full council to determine what we're looking at in terms of going forward for subsequent years, or using the remainder of those dollars as well as the 310. So I think there are a number of questions that still need to be answered by the full council. My understanding was the county was going to meet with us in early June, I think it is, to provide us with details of exactly, as they fine-tune the program, exactly what they would be expecting or asking for from the different jurisdictions.
I'm Joan Flannell. I can tell you that we're looking at a much lower price for our partners. I think that the whole project for 1 year is going to cost about $1.5 million. And so we're now trying to shore up all of our funding. So I don't have an exact number for our partners, but I want it to be equal for each of our partners. I can tell you that $310,000 is way too much. So we have 5 partners, we have ARPA money, and we have a couple other funding sources. So I'm looking at something maybe around $100,000 or $125,000 for the pilot. So we're going to be shoring up these numbers in the next couple of weeks. I mean, when we go and bring the contracts to the Board of Supervisors, which we're hoping to do on June, I think it's 26th, you know, we will have to have our funding tied up, you know, when we bring it to the board. So I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to give you a much more definite number.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's just as I think all of us, both the county and the city, look at going through our budget process, right? We're all not flush with cash. And I think and even the concern originally with the Crisis Now piece was this 3-year period and what happens in year 4, right? And so,
Exactly.
And so part of my line of questioning on this is, right, is if it's $100,000 or if it's $300,000 at some point, right, the dedicated ARP dollars are going to go away, right? We're not going to have that, and it's going to hit general fund, and we have to then make a decision on, do we continue to fund this program that presumably adds a benefit to the community? We all want hospitalizations to go down. We all want people who are in crisis to get the care they need. I think everyone in this room and vast majority of our communities at large want that. But then as we face all these fiscal decisions, the governor talking about cutting Medi-Cal reimbursement, all these different things that are happening right now, it's just, I think, prudent for us to have this conversation around what does that look like as those funds get spent, right? And I think that's more so where I am around with the city, really looking at what is it that we're investing in, right? And as this has continued to change, what's our commitments with the county? I just want to make sure that we have that opportunity to weigh in. In our council, I think there's only 2 council members, myself and Councilman Partita, who were engaged and involved in those conversations when they happened a number of years ago.
At the last Board of Supervisors meeting, it was the last one, when we were talking about this issue, we also assured that the second embedded clinician for Davis, that the funding was going to that, so that I hope that message you received that, but that has finally happened, because that was very important to us that happened.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I actually have a bunch, but we have 1 minute left.
Yeah, I know, that's, I don't know what people's time is like.
So I'm not going to ask any of them.
Okay.
I am available if for some reason you do have other questions you want me to address. You can certainly reach out to me.
Okay, great. Looking forward to some solid numbers coming up in June. Okay, we have then, if we're finished with this item, we have 30 seconds each for the presentations. Go.
So the City of Davis, as we just mentioned, is working on our budget. We'll be releasing that at the end of the week and having conversations over the next couple of weeks. And as Councilmember Chapman said, we're not flush with cash. We are continuing as well to work through the two major development projects that are, have been submitted to the city with Village Farms and then Willow Grove, making progress. So there's a lot of work on both of those to do. And then finally, just to note that we are also working in collaboration with the university and all of our different folks to look at how we might restructure our portion of picnic day going forward so that we don't have incidents and situations like we had this past picnic day. So, did I make it 30 seconds?
Yep.
All right.
Go. All right, so county, very similar conversation with respect to budget. We have a budget hearing coming up with the Board of Supervisors on June 10th for preliminary budget adoption. Of course, with us, the final adoption is in September, but things are trending towards the initial adoption on June 10th. And yeah, not flush with cash is the mantra, I think, globally it seems. We're certainly in that boat as well. And it's been a significant effort and lift to get to a place of a balanced budget for next fiscal year, and it only gets more challenging moving forward. So a lot of energy and time being spent on that for sure. We also have some things happening around filling of various vacancies and so forth. You may have seen the announcement we made of appointing a HHSA director. Joan Fennell has been excellent in serving us as interim. Thank you again, Joan, for that, for your services. But starting June 4th, we do have Monica Morales coming on board as our new HHSA director, coming to us from Santa Cruz County. So very much looking forward to her coming on board, helping bring some of that stability back to the organization and her experience. And then I'll also note an item of common interest that will be coming up on next week's Board of Supervisors agenda is an update on animal services, and which will be fairly extensive. And we're communicating with our jurisdictional partners, city managers, and so forth on what to expect there and to keep the communication going on that. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Yes?
Is there,
Yes, now I was going to go to Board of Supervisors, City Council Communications.
all right.
Did we
Yes,
communicate?
I do have something to communicate. Friday is Celebrate Davis, and I hear it is the very first drone show in all of Yolo County, so you should come out and see them.
Any other communications? Seeing none, our next meeting is September 10th. Gloria will have the gavel, and we are adjourned.